I'm Layert, and I know you're sick of feeling like your energy is vanishing before the day has even begun, or that no matter how hard you try to stay focused, something inside of you constantly fails. Take a moment to learn why it's so important to preserve your vital force and how it may dramatically transform your thoughts, actions, and emotions if you've previously experienced this feeling of perpetual wear and tear, lack of vitality, and even aggravation. Because when we talk about lapses and the profound wear and tear they cause, I'm not just talking about banal exhaustion. I'm talking about a significant drop in our state of high performance. This perception that vital force must be preserved through seminal retention has always made me think about how much we are willing to take care of our energy and what we actually put into our body and mind. I liken this to how we handle our electrical devices. Nobody would take the chance of using a random charger that wasn't calibrated for the precise voltage because it would only take one mistake to seriously harm the gadget. This kind of thinking also applies to our bodies, as we almost instantly become aware of the negative effects when we don't provide them with enough vitamins and minerals. Every mineral has a specific function, and the body reacts strongly when something is absent. This is especially true when discussing nutrients like zinc, magnesium, proteins, and important fatty acids that are lost during the disposal or waste of semen. Many men ask me why they feel so exhausted after a release, and the reason is exactly this imbalance that occurs as the body tries to replenish what was depleted. For instance, the release of prolactin lowers the urge to continue sexual activity, indicating that the body is pulling the brakes to conserve fuel because there has been a loss that must be made up for. The necessity of clearing the field before sowing superior seeds makes the significance of strategic fasting plain, and this has a significant impact on maintaining our structure. If we don't take the effort to eliminate the excesses we've amassed over time, especially when we consume poor quality food or are constantly exposed to harmful content that throws off our mental equilibrium, there's no use in beginning to fill our bodies with positive things. It is useless to install high-performance parts on an old automobile without first cleaning the engine and making sure the entire ignition system is prepared to handle the upgrade. This is how I prefer to think about it. In this regard, meals with great nutritional value, such watermelon, lemon, vegetables, and others, emerge as real heroes in the quest for renewal. I still recall how life-changing it was to realize that watermelon serves as a cleansing agent in addition to being a source of nutrients, especially when paired with lemon and a small pinch of Himalayan salt to maximize its health advantages. In addition to high-quality vitamins and minerals, it seems as though the body is given a revitalizing fuel that realigns all of its internal energy, clearing the channels and preparing everything for the subsequent nutrient insertions to function even better. To understand how the solidity of the structure is determined by the selection of the best materials, it is quite instructive to consider the three little pigs analogy. The interior structure will mirror the straw house that is easily toppled by everyday problems if we attempt to increase our frequency by solely investing in empty foods that are high in industrialized substances, loaded with sugars, and loaded with chemicals. However, when we choose to produce stronger semen by consuming rich nutrients like zinc, magnesium, calcium, and other vital minerals, we are choosing materials that are resilient enough to withstand much more severe storms and to stand firm in the face of outside pressure. It is important to note that we are discussing everything that enters through the senses and influences the mind, not only food. The quality of the information we choose to take in has a direct impact on how we view and engage with the world. It involves choosing carefully not just what we consume, but also what we watch, listen to, and think about. I often remind people that this heavy energy always finds its way into our frequency if our day is filled with bad news and poisonous discussions. Similar to this, we begin to create a lighter and more lively environment around us when we surround ourselves with heightened stimuli, such as the companionship of supportive people or content that teaches us something useful. This affects our motivation and state of alertness, and our capacity to continue emphasizing seminal retention as a source of vigor and power. We frequently hear that fasting, whether it be intermittent or continuous, is about allowing the body to rearrange itself and eliminate waste that overburdens the system, particularly after consuming too much. Food. Consumption of low-nutrient value processed meals. This makes it simpler to experience the benefits of eating real food since the body responds more strongly when it realizes it is getting stuff that it can truly use to rebuild. It's similar to emptying a pail of old water so that fresh water won't mix with the filth. To put it another way, preparatory cleaning is an essential step in order to enhance the nutrition process. Speaking of nutrients, I also want to stress how important it is to think of food as the body's replacement parts. Every serving of spinach, every glass of green juice, and every piece of broccoli you consume gives your body the building blocks it needs to heal the damage that occurs every day, particularly if you engage in sexual activity frequently without maintaining adequate retention, or whether there is a tendency to fall frequently. The reasoning is straightforward. Choose foods that include zinc, magnesium, potassium, omega-3, and other essential chemicals for semen repair, and incorporate them into your diet. However, there is no set recipe for what to eat because everyone has different tastes and dietary constraints. Everyday schedule. One of the things I discovered is that providing the body with a lot of nutrients boosts vital energy, mental clarity, emotional stability, and the sense of being in harmony with something bigger. It becomes much easier to maintain composure under pressure and to restrain urges that were previously uncontrollable, such the insatiable urge to experience an orgasm without considering the potential effects on our energy levels. This relates to the notion of examining the media we consume. I will always get a sort of internal restlessness if I watch sensationalist news or television shows with a lot of violence, as though it were taking away some of my tranquility. I can definitely see an improvement in my mood and focus when I replace these behaviors with motivational reading or movies about personal growth. And since my thinking is less contaminated by unbridled desires, this has a direct impact on my decision to maintain my retention. I like to keep in mind now how overwhelming our world may get if we don't filter what comes into our focus. It has become more common to look around and see individuals surrounded by negativity, and I think that one approach to guard against this spiritual contagion is to maintain a high frequency for yourself. It's similar to building an internal wall that keeps all of this complex knowledge from having a significant impact on us. We are naturally less prone to falling into thinking traps or self-destructive behaviors, since the body, which is reinforced by proper nourishment, supports the mind to function in a more refined form. It is simpler to recognize these moments of weakness or vulnerability and decide how to respond rather than just giving in when the body is properly nourished, and fasting keeps the system clean. Speaking about this subject makes me believe that in a culture that moves so quickly, not many people pause to consider how crucial it is to preserve their own inner reserves. The way that many people approach sexuality reflects the instantaneous nature of our time. Some people just form relationships in order to experience climax, without realizing how holy this energy is for the body. Understanding the need of retention leads to both a discernible improvement in one's physical appearance and an awareness of the necessity of choosing what one consumes, whether it be information or food. This opens the door to personal maturity because the individual stops acting without thinking and begins to consider whether to continue squandering their own energy or to direct it towards something more worthwhile. Furthermore, the parallel between the act of spending money without having a corresponding income and the constant loss of semen has always intrigued me. The account eventually loses money. The body experiences a worsening of fatigue, a decline in mood, and a clouding of the mind. Therefore, by altering your diet, including foods that aid in mineral replenishment, taking deliberate breaks, and fasting to rid your body of toxins, you can keep the balance from spiraling out of control. It is important to keep in mind that this idea of creating and cleaning encompasses both the mental and physical aspects. Relationships and routines that deplete our souls frequently cause us to become emotionally intoxicated. The pre-existing negative energy will suffocate whatever elevated content that we attempt to implant in our minds if we do not release ourselves from this burden. The idea that merely adding pure water will fix all problems is like trying to pour clean water into a pail full of muck. Therefore, I think it's crucial to make room for an emotional detox, which can involve avoiding toxic situations and having pointless conversations that lead to conflict and tension. Fasting, which entails saying no to continual stimulation of instant gratification and trains the brain to become less reliant on simple rewards, can also be viewed as a sign of discipline. And this has an impact on seminal retention, since people who become accustomed to kicking minor food addictions can eventually control their sexual urges, which causes them to waste their important energy. All of this is a part of the same self-awareness training, where the individual learns to identify their flaws and work on each one patiently and resolutely, without resorting to drastic or unmaintainable approaches. Few habits, in my experience, offer as many tangible advantages as a clean diet, disciplined fasting, and the practice of retention mixed with a careful selection of what enters your mind. Many people wonder if all this commitment is truly worth it. Since our bodies and minds are interdependent, it is nearly hard to take care of one while neglecting the other without experiencing negative effects. Every action we take to improve our diet, think more clearly, and manage our sexual urges has a direct impact on how we conduct our daily lives. In the end, we observe improved problem-solving clarity, increased readiness to take on challenging endeavors, and a noticeable emotional stability that translates into tolerance and fortitude in the face of outside upheaval. Furthermore, the problem of mental focus gets worse because our cognitive abilities are still powerful when we are not distracted by mistakes, and this is demonstrated by our capacity to learn, retain information, and consistently provide results. I like to compare the process of cleansing the filters to this mental clarity. The flow is reduced, and the water that flows through a filthy water filter is less pure. Cleaner water flows more freely when the filter is changed because it renews the passage. Similar to this, our brains become thicker and slower when we overstimulate them with excessive sexual impulses and unbalanced nutrition. Retaining energy, eating healthily and fasting, on the other hand, is like changing the filter, making the flow of thoughts more efficient, clear, and clean. I understand that some people question these results, but in reality, those who give it a try often report significant improvements in their mood and self-perception. Because it takes work and perseverance to maintain this discipline, one feels more accomplished and respected, which boosts one's sense of self-worth. Since semen retention is a means of directing sexual energy for inner development and raising one's level of consciousness and vigor, it is not surprising that it has been mentioned for millennia in various philosophies and spiritual practices. People who embrace this viewpoint frequently observe changes in how they approach relationships, their jobs, their personal objectives, and even how they perceive their own limitations. All of this relates to the chapter's topic, since it is much harder to succeed in retention if you don't have a solid nutritional foundation and aren't aware that you need to cleanse before you can develop. Fatigue becomes chronic and impairs mood and willingness to take care of other facets of life if the body is unable to replenish the minerals lost with each ejaculation. Retention must therefore be supported by a lifestyle that encourages the generation of high-quality semen and an organism that is robust enough to retain that energy in order to be successful. It is crucial to apply this idea in a realistic manner to daily life. For people who are just beginning to follow this self-care path, fasting in the morning, for instance, can be an excellent place to start. Making salads, veggies, nutritious grains, and fruits a priority at lunchtime helps fuel the body, and reading motivational books or engaging in meditation feeds the mind. As a result, the organism is less affected by emotional or physical toxins at night, and sexual impulses are typically easier to suppress. From that point on, the routine becomes more fluid, since it is a process of balance where the person feels more determined and willing to stick to the commitment rather than something constrictive or exhausting. Some people continue to wonder if this discipline eliminates life's pleasures, but I would argue that it has the exact opposite effect. Pleasure becomes more sophisticated and conscious when body and mind are in harmony. The difference, in my opinion, is that the sensations are now deep and regulated rather than impulsive and shallow. Naturally, this is not to say that you may never have a sweet treat or a higher calorie item. Rather, it means that you need to exercise more discretion to avoid making this kind of eating a daily habit that destroys your health. Similarly, it is not about giving up sexuality, but rather focusing it on times when one feels more connected to oneself or to one's partner, rather than succumbing to the addiction of transient and depleting pleasure. According to this viewpoint, seminal retention ceases to be only a method or a personal struggle, and instead serves as a catalyst for change that challenges everyone to consider what they are ingesting, whether it be from their plate or their phone screen. Discussing this brings back memories of the times I was strolling through the city and seeing how many commercials and stimuli, whether related to food or sex, were there to push us to the limit. It's like living in a situation designed to constantly challenge our self-control. We can only refuse things that can only do harm when we are genuinely fortified from the inside out. In light of this, it makes perfect sense to nurture not only wholesome foods, but also constructive ideas and high-quality information. I typically recall that if we let everything into our minds, it's like leaving a house open and letting anyone enter and do anything they want. Similarly, we may better filter what comes to us by maintaining conscious attention, which increases the likelihood that we will store positive things and eliminate negative ones that can sap our vitality. I've noticed that it takes time for this mindset shift to occur. Many people experience a process of making mistakes, growing, and changing gradually. As an example, a time of disordered diet and excessive stimulation of negative ideas tends to have a tremendous impact on the ability to remain steadfast in memory. The point is that every error can teach important lessons. We are more motivated to avoid repeating that pattern once we put this knowledge into practice. In this situation, the repetition of constructive behavior solidifies what we refer to as a new identity, where the person no longer sees himself as a waste of energy on any stimulation, but rather as someone who deliberately raises his vibration. Everyday life is changed by this slow process, which makes ordinary chores more pleasurable and allows creativity to explore elements of life that were before unconsidered, since the mind was preoccupied with coping with the fatigue and lack of clarity brought on by the ongoing loss of energy. Interestingly, retention is no longer viewed as a sacrifice, but rather as an act of self-love and self-respect once this care becomes second nature. It is not the same as suppressing one's sexuality or descending into extreme abstention, which simply leads to annoyance. The idea here is to pinpoint the exact moment when man takes charge of his own energy and begins to use it in a positive and innovative manner. As everything begins to rotate at a more harmonious rhythm, we experience a larger life in a sense. With every stride, we observe that our contact with the outside world lightens, our physical disposition improves, our self-confidence increases, and our mind becomes more open to new thoughts and insights. Many refer to this stage as a sort of awakening, since it becomes increasingly evident how important it is to have a healthy body and a healthy mind with each day that goes by. Since we are positively impacted by the experiences and outcomes of individuals who have previously put fasting, meal selection, and content filtering tactics into practice, I understand how vital it is to share experiences with those who have also chosen this route. In a universe that insists on encouraging us to indulge ourselves and pursue instant gratification at all costs, unity is even more important. We have the advantage of being more conscious of our true goals, but it still feels like we are rowing against the tide. Although it is particularly helpful for people who want to get the most out of this technique, the combination of fasting, high-nutrient foods, and mental care is not unique to the field of seminal retention. In actuality, anyone who wishes to enhance their mental and physical abilities, maintain emotional equilibrium, and defend themselves against the relentless stress of a hyper-connected and overstimulated world can embrace this way of life. Every action has a very clear logic, and when we all follow the same routine, we can build an internal stronghold that defends us against a variety of external threats, such as diseases, social pressures, or even self-destruction. I wholeheartedly concur with all of this. However, it's obvious that everyone has the freedom to choose their own path and determine how quickly they want to change. However, I think that sharing this vision can inspire others who haven't yet encountered the concept of fusing the strength that retention can offer with the effectiveness of clean dieting and fasting. I stress that while there are no quick fixes, there are methodical procedures that, with time, produce physical and mental benefits that improve people's quality of life in a permanent manner. I'm even more inspired to take this route and share what worked for me when I read about folks who were accustomed to energy-draining behaviors and made the decision to change. As a result, I think it is crucial that everyone examine how urgent it is to keep our attention on the things that support our mental, bodily, and spiritual health. Having a high vibration becomes practically a shield against everything that tries to bring us down in this challenging time. I am confident that by taking these actions, everyone will have the opportunity to create a strong basis for retention, reap the rewards of having a healthy body and a clear head, and shield themselves from the many harmful influences that are constantly present. Awaiting an opportunity to defeat us, imagine holding the information necessary to activate crystalline oil, awaken your kundalini, and achieve ultimate spiritual freedom. Discover the ancient secrets of seminal retention in my new book, Alchemy of the Gods, and learn how each method can transform your personal development. This content, which is available in print, digital, and audiobook formats, was produced to give you instant access to the lessons that will fundamentally alter your concentration, energy, and inner connection. Use the link in the video description or the comments to secure your copy right away. These unique strategies might be the game changer you've been waiting for. But first, I have some unexpected news for you. The Semen Retention Success Path is the ultimate manual you've been looking for if you're prepared to change your life and increase your energy to completely new heights. I compiled the 6 main elements of semen retention's content into an audiobook that is jam-packed with insightful knowledge for your growth. Get yourself for a voyage of personal development and self-discovery that goes much beyond the norm. Imagine regaining your vigor, developing deeply and permanently, and discovering a vast amount of vital energy. This audiobook is a master key that unlocks doors to a new degree of achievement and fulfillment, not merely a source of knowledge. There's more. A 30% discount on my special ebook, The Art of Semen Retention for Men, which has more than 20 pages of purely transformative content, is yours when you buy the audiobook. Strong methods for your spiritual growth, personal development, emotional equilibrium, self-awareness and self-improvement, spiritual connection and life purpose will be taught to you. I promise that all of this will assist you in realizing your full potential. For those who like to take things a step further, I made a new members area on the channel where you can become a major supporter and get special YouTube perks like loyalty badges, early access to material, and much more. This enthusiastic involvement will serve as a powerful incentive to keep providing news and enhancing our community. To join this chosen group that is committed to becoming the best version of itself, click the Become a Member button. Don't let this chance slip away. The moment to begin is now, and the doors of transformation are open. It is easy to see how the vibration of the body and mind rises when you invest in natural foods full of minerals and vitamins that strengthen the body, as opposed to industrialized foods full of harmful additives that can drastically lower your daily mood. Once you realize that the choice of ingredients can transform energy levels and directly impact how a man deals with seminal retention, the need to take greater care of your diet after the initial cleansing and nutrition stage becomes an exciting journey. It's fascinating to see how some vegetables, which are thought to be extremely powerful, have a strong impact on vitality because they combine nutrients and qualities that help replenish minerals lost during periods of wear and tear. I see this as a chance to experiment with a variety of vegetables and green leaves, tailoring the menu to each person's preferences because everyone has different tastes. For example, you could use Brussels sprouts, spinach, kale, or broccoli to create a dish that is high in micronutrients. This decision, in my opinion, is magical because the body uses everything it gets as a starting point for cell formation. And the quality of what we eat affects not only our overall health, but also the strength of our semen. This is because a diet high in processed foods, saturated fats, and sugar weakens cell structure, which lowers vibration and weakens immunity, which increases the risk of falls and relapses in the retention process. I think it's important to point out that many people are unaware of how much investing in live foods raises the energy standard. Fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and vegetables become pure energy generators, in contrast to eating industrialized foods that are low in nutrients and contain chemicals and preservatives that ultimately throw off the body's equilibrium. It's fascinating to observe how this concern for what we put on our plates relates to the notion that everything is information, including the news we read and the shows we watch. The information we consume is converted into data that the body processes and uses to rebuild itself. So if we choose to eat things that are low in nutrients, we run the risk of overloading our system with negative charges that upset our emotional and mental equilibrium. And I observe that in this context, it makes perfect sense to say that some contents can be as toxic as a food full of additives, because the mind also feeds on what it sees, hears, and feels. This means that while we are investing in the quality of our diet, we should also be more mindful of the information and stimuli that reach us because we know that being in an environment or routine that encourages pessimism can seriously undermine motivation and retention focus. It promotes self-destructive norms. It normally takes dedication to break these habits, But the payoff is when we observe an increase in consciousness that has a direct impact on retention practice, since the body feels nourished and supported to sustain sexual energy without experiencing significant declines in vitality. The strategy that uses foods like mushrooms is, in my opinion, quite relevant since they offer a distinctive range of nutrients that can close some gaps in the conventional diet, and because they make an intriguing meat substitute in some recipes. For instance, lion's mane piques interest due to its meat-like texture as well as qualities that many believe boost mental acuity and vitality, which is particularly helpful for people trying to increase their frequency through semen retention. When considering the network of mycelium that extends through the plant roots, as if it were a web of information that runs across the entire planet, oyster mushrooms are also notable for their unique qualities. Some claim that regular consumption of these fungi can help one feel more connected to the primordial aspects of nature. It becomes even more fascinating to consider the possibility that, by consuming these foods, we connect to an ancestral knowledge that can raise our vibration and increase our awareness of how everything around us is interconnected, given that the Earth is a vast living organism in which all forms of life cooperate and communicate through these subterranean threads. This realization is strengthened when we keep in mind that the body is not limited to the physical realm, because our energy quality is also greatly influenced by our emotions and mental states. When discussing maintaining vitality, the mention of walking on grass, tanning, and avoiding unfavorable surroundings makes perfect sense because, just as we eat to keep our bodies healthy, we also need sources of subtle energy to feed our souls, and nature provides this in abundance, whether it be through contact with green spaces or the act of walking barefoot on the ground. Because the body and mind align with lighter frequencies, allowing the energy flow to run without so many interruptions, I believe that spending time in quiet places away from urban noise causes people to report an immediate change in their mood and stress levels. Almost everyone agrees that getting a healthy dosage of natural vitamin D from mild sunlight makes you feel better. This vitamin D then acts as a trigger for positive chemical events and makes you feel happier. All of this supports the notion that developing a strong seminal retention process is closely linked to the accumulation of little everyday cares that extend well beyond moderation in sexual activity. This combination of elements, in my opinion, is like a piece of gear that requires each component to function well in order for the ensemble to perform at its best. Eating healthily is pointless if we spend all of our time in poisonous surroundings, and searching for nice surroundings is insufficient if we are not concerned about the quality of the food. Stepping on the grass, feeling the ground beneath your feet, and taking in the fresh air may seem like simple practices, but many people overlook how these activities can trigger a sort of ancestral connection with the planet, which releases tensions and anxieties that build up throughout the day. Some refer to it as warming, which is akin to re-establishing a connection between the body's energy and the energy of the Earth, balancing electromagnetic loads, and offering nearly instantaneous relief from stored tensions. The body feels filled with clean energy when this care is combined with the consumption of electrical and natural foods, which has a beneficial effect on impulse control and overall disposition. This makes the reflection in the retention process more noticeable. Because the body is accustomed to receiving high-quality nutrients, it can better manage the replacement of what was lost, or, better yet, it can prevent unnecessary losses because it is well supplied. This allows the man who wishes to maintain his life force to realize that he no longer needs to worry so much about the drastic energy after a simple carelessness. I'm intrigued by the fact that, according to some reports, people can tell the difference between a day when they prioritized living foods and a day when they ate what they refer to as dead food. They also mention feeling much more exhausted after eating large meals that are high in sugar or saturated fat, and they describe a mental sluggishness that makes it difficult to focus and stay motivated to stay firm in the journey of raising vibration, particularly when considering how hard it is to resist sexual impulses that arise during routine. However, they report a leap, a more stable mood, and a sense of mental clarity when this menu is replaced with fruits, vegetables, nutritious grains, mushrooms, and green meals. This makes the task of retention much easier. Since the body is not continuously worn down by frequent ejaculations, a person becomes more sensitive to subtle sensations, such as how food affects your energy, which is why I've come to realize that the ability to distinguish between living and dead foods is directly related to the sensitivity that develops during the retention process. Retention, in other words, sharpens the senses and causes the body to communicate more clearly what is good and what is harmful. It's almost as though there used to be a layer of sensory numbness that made it difficult for the person to recognize how eating affected his bodily and mental well-being. Findings along the way of looking for foods and routines with a high vibration can be thrilling. For example, adding green leaves to every meal is a simple way to use creativity to keep things interesting and avoid boredom. For instance, somebody who dislikes salads can try making green juices or smoothies by combining fruits and leaves to keep the flavor appealing. Others might decide to make soups and creams with mushrooms and other vegetables, resulting in variations that enhance the appeal of eating healthily. It is crucial, in my opinion, to emphasize that everyone should respect their own tastes and restrictions and work to modify the recommendations to fit their own circumstances. After all, there is no point in trying to compel someone to consume something that will ultimately create disgust and render the routine unsustainable. Since no one alters their eating habits overnight, much less goes barefoot in the grass every day without creating a new pattern that works with their current lifestyle, knowing that everything happens gradually also helps people avoid frustration. I've noticed that when retention solidifies, the desire to take better care of the body grows stronger. This leads to a positive feedback loop in which the person makes better food choices, has more energy, feels more driven to keep up retention, and stays committed to the goal of evolving. It is typical to observe a loss of disposition when this cycle breaks, for whatever reason, which makes it more challenging to regain discipline. However, this is exactly where the warning state is relevant, as the person starts to recognize the triggers and learns to take preventative action. Given that stress and long-term negativity can have physiological repercussions that impair the body's capacity to absorb vitamins and minerals effectively and alter the generation of hormones linked to well-being, it makes fair to assume that even environmental quality has a direct impact on nutrient usage. Therefore, when we emphasize the significance of avoiding densely energetic locations, we are not advocating vacuous mysticism, but rather a logic that acknowledges the interplay between the body and mind in all of our decisions. According to integrative medicine experts, ongoing stress can lead to hormone inflammation and imbalances, which supports the notion that eating healthily is not enough. One must also make sure that one's emotions are in harmony. In this way, the sun, earth, trees, clean water, and fresh air all serve as natural remedies for accumulated stress, enabling the body to utilize nutrients as efficiently as possible. The man who practices retention also feels more stable while conserving energy, free from the emotional lows that can occasionally lead to relapses. It's fascinating to me to learn that in certain nations and cultures, it's normal for people to spend a portion of their days hiking in the outdoors, relaxing in parks and in areas with beaches, reflecting on the ocean. This is because they intuitively recognize how important it is to re-establish a connection with nature in order to decompress from the stresses of the city. This behavior, together with eating a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, grains, and mushrooms, helps people build a more harmonious life to the extent that it causes distinct reactions in how each person handles their own sexuality. Personally, I found that any time I experimented with a vegetable-rich diet and had the opportunity to get some mild sun exposure, my mood stabilized and my desire to maintain my firmness in retention was strengthened since I became more conscious of my body and the energy it contains. When I go through periods where I don't give this enough thought, I watch how my disposition declines, my desire to consume junk food grows, and my retention becomes more difficult as my body tries to make up for the energy shortage in ways that aren't necessarily beneficial. I also want to emphasize the significance of electromagnetic meals, often known as electrical foods, which are essentially foods that have high concentrations of minerals like potassium, magnesium, and other trace components that operate to conduct electricity throughout the body. These factors then directly affect how the brain and muscles work, which has a significant effect on mental clarity, motor coordination, and exercise propensity. We enter a potent synergy to sustain sexual energy in high patterns when we supplement this nutritional contribution from mushrooms, which in addition to being delicious, can provide rejuvenating components. Some people even claim that when these meals are properly met, they have an easier time focusing on daily chores and controlling their desires. Conversely, If the diet consists of processed meals, sugary drinks, and questionable items, we see a propensity for inflammation, mood fluctuations, and even sleep issues that hinder emotional stability and muscle repair, creating an environment that is conducive to retention practice slippage. Although I think that every organism reacts differently, the broad rules of what constitutes a living meal and a dead food are frequently comparable to most, and the experience of individuals who have undergone this food change attests to the fact that the difference is noticeable within a few days. I've come to the realization that as time passes, the taste buds will like more natural foods, displacing the need to consume highly processed meals that primarily use chemical additives, salt, and sugar to cover up their lack of flavor. This taste adaptation is evident in daily outcomes, such as decreased mood swings linked to blood glucose spikes and dips, decreased fluid retention, and improved intestinal functioning, all of which contribute to a lighter body that is easier to adhere to in order to preserve one's own sexual vitality. I am aware that some people who are accustomed to more decadent eating habits may initially object to this transition process, but the benefits of increased vitality and mental clarity typically outweigh any costs, and when combined with the retention practice, give adopting these changes a deeper meaning. It seems as though every meal has evolved into a journey of self-discovery where the person realizes that his body and mind are one cohesive entity and that it is not drina there, but rather the accumulation of modest, constructive behaviors that sustain life. Because he understands that his energy is more strong and that this is mirrored in trust, willpower, and even personal attraction in various situations of everyday life, the sensation of well-being that arises from this consciousness frequently serves as the catalyst that keeps man motivated to continue retention. By strengthening their internal structure with good food, people often cease vibrating at a low frequency and start to emit a more vibrant and self-assured presence, which attracts more aligned possibilities and relationships. The practice of retention, when paired with a healthy habit, becomes apparent as a factor determining when others around you observe this difference and ask what was done to attain this level of balance. Given that a person with high energy tends to share more positive things and is less prone to irritations and trivial conflicts, it is not hyperbole to say that the way we take care of our bodies and spirits has an impact on our surroundings in addition to our personal lives. This research highlights the importance of what we refer to as lifestyle. Seminal retention involves not just preserving the seed, but also establishing a network of behaviors that promote this choice, such as mindful food handling, spending time in nature, and keeping an eye on our information intake. When implemented, all of this creates a strong basis that staves off emotional upheavals or fleeting impulses to organize our dedication to their own growth. Many people are unaware of how delicious vegetables like mushrooms and green leaves can be. They simply need to experiment with different cooking methods and combine complementing ingredients and seasonings to make interesting and delicious meals. In order to counteract bitterness, I like to mention inventive recipes like mushroom risottos, salads enhanced with oil seeds and light sauces, broths made with vegetables and aromatic herbs, and green smoothies that combine spinach with pineapple and banana. The palate rejuvenates itself when it discovers these flavors, which in turn provides incentive to sustain the high frequency in food and, in turn, to sustain the sexual energy we are developing. It's crucial to keep in mind that cooking and making thoughtful food choices also carries a self-care goal that permeates everything we do throughout the day. Even while it may seem straightforward, this mental shift helps the person value his own physical and mental well-being and treat himself with more respect. As a result, he feels more deserving of the advantages that retention provides. Because the person knows that when he takes care of himself in a vital way, he is creating a stronger and more resilient version of himself. This sense of merit helps push destructive thoughts and the discouragement that frequently results in relapses. We are developing the vitality that turns retention into a natural condition of living rather than a burden with every dietary choice, every step we take toward the sun, and every touch we make with the grass and the ground. Even though it seems like a long way, the truth is that every little thing you do adds up to a solid foundation. The best example of this is when you feel like you can handle the stresses of daily life without losing your strength, because your body and mind are being supplied with stable, clean fuel. The decision to resort to a living diet, natural contact, and conscious sexual control seems almost like a return to roots, a ransom of forgotten but essential principles for human equilibrium in a world where the majority of people feel overtaken by a fast-paced and artificially stimulated civilization. This is not a utopia. Rather, it is a practice that people who have the eyes to see that the harmony between our body, mind, and surroundings is where completeness can be achieved, not in the excess of fleeting and meaningless pleasures. This reconnection, in my opinion, turns into the real secret to reaching a higher state of consciousness, where retention manifests as a component of a larger goal to develop spiritually, emotionally, and physically, leading to profound maturation that is evident in all facets of life, rather than as an end in and of itself. This knowledge, along with the knowledge that there are no prefabricated formulas, but rather potential approaches that should be tailored to each person's unique circumstances, characterizes what I regard as a functional approach because it respects individuality while providing clear guidelines for those who wish to establish a strong energy base and sustain retention without compromising mood and disposition. Understanding what raises and lowers our vibrations helps us become more conscious, which in turn helps us make more intelligent judgments about the things we want to accomplish, whether that be more focus, mental clarity, or just a life with fewer emotional swings. The following pillars, mushrooms, sunlight, green leaves, fasting, exposure to nature, and selective information, can subtly transform how we see and experience memory if they are integrated into daily life. As the body develops resilience, and the mind releases excesses that before felt uncontrollable, practice becomes more organic. Sharing these thoughts, in my opinion, is a means of inspiring more and more men to realize the value of this journey and the wealth of knowledge they can get about themselves by forming even small routines that preserve and boost essential energy. Slips are likely to occur during the process, which is normal, but each fall could serve as a reminder to reevaluate the routes, reaffirm the importance of eating, regain contact with the ground, and keep in mind that our power is determined by the things we choose to put into our bodies and minds. In this situation, live food and reconnecting with nature function as catalysts to raise and develop that latent force. Constant practice enables us to see that retention can no longer be a burden, but rather may become a natural step of appreciation for its own potential.